Welcome to Health, Housing, Energy Equity, exploring clean energy access for low and moderate income residents. I'm your host, Brooks Winter, and I'm a senior clean energy specialist at the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. MAPC is the regional planning agency for the Greater Boston, the 101 cities and towns of Greater Boston. I'm joined by my colleague, Christian Brandt from MAPC's Community Engagement Team, who will be our Zoom moderator for today. This training is being recorded and the presentations will be shared on the MAPC website. If you do not want to be recorded, you can turn off your camera and microphone. I want to begin today, as we have throughout this training series, by acknowledging that we are gathering in the middle of converging and connected crises. The public health crisis of the COVID-19 pandemic, the climate crisis, and the housing crisis. Over the past 18 months or so, we have seen just how closely linked health, housing, and climate change are through the lenses of these interconnected, intersecting crises. I invite us all to take a moment to breathe together and to honor those who have been impacted by any and all of these issues. Thank you for being here. I also want to acknowledge that we have a wonderful diversity of perspectives with us here today. People from different places, different fields, and different backgrounds. Welcome to all of you, and especially to those of you who wouldn't normally attend a training about clean energy. We're so glad that you're here. Over the course of this training series, we have been learning about how health, housing, and energy are connected, and what we can do to help our neighbors lower their energy costs and make their homes healthier and safer with clean energy. We are also exploring some of the underlying issues that make it difficult for low and moderate income folks to access clean energy and sharing resources to overcome these barriers. In the first session, we learned about how our history of racist and discriminatory policy impacts who has access to affordable housing and affordable energy today. Then we looked at the clean energy programs that can help lower the energy cost burden for low and moderate income people in Greater Boston and across Massachusetts. Last week, we explored the health benefits of energy efficiency and new solutions like air source heat pumps. Then we learned about the ways in which communities are working to expand access to weatherization, clean heating and cooling systems, and other solutions for lowering energy bills by reducing energy use. Today, we're going to learn about solar energy programs and other opportunities to help reduce energy burdens. Ben Underwood from Resonant Energy will share approaches to building wealth by expanding access to solar. Then Gabe Shapiro from All In Energy will talk about community solar programs and other ways to help lower utility bills. Finally, we will hear from Lisa Dobbs from the Mass Clean Energy Center about Empower Massachusetts, a grant program designed to provide access to the benefits of clean energy for previously underserved populations. This training is made possible by a grant from the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources through its Affordable Access Regional Coordination, or ARC program. Christian, do you want to take us through our icebreaker before we dive in?
Sure thing. All right, everyone. So we are going to use something called Jamboard for our icebreaker today. So I'm going to share a link with you in the chat. So once I have done that, oops, I'm sending only to people in the waiting room, and there's no one there. So, okay. So link to the Jamboard is in the chat. So what I would like for you to do, I'm going to share my screen. And what I would like for you to do is use the Jamboard to share with us an image of what you are hoping to learn today. The green text on the Jamboard is some instructions, but I'll just say that out loud for everyone in case that's helpful. So to post a picture, you can either select the image icon on the left-hand side of the screen. So that would be this sort of stylized mountain button. Or you can just go to your browser and find an image and then right-click it, click copy, and then paste it here. So I'm going to participate in this with you. Well, actually, I'm not going to because it's covering up the screen. But you can also leave a text note if you want to click the sticky note. Already, I love that. Solar installation, it looks like. Thanks to you who shared that. If you would like to leave a sticky note, you can also do that by clicking on the sort of sticky note looking thing. And that will show up as a sticky note. So I'll give some folks a little bit more time to add some to this, but after we move on, please feel free to keep adding the things that you're hoping to learn today to this icebreaker document. Perfect. I love that one. Financing, yes. How do we use collective voice of MAPC to influence the decarbonization of the decarbonization plan currently being drafted by the utilities? People power, these are all really great. Practical ways to reach and assist low-income residents who have access to solar. Resources for solar in municipal light company communities, i.e. non-mass save resources. These are all really great suggestions and things that you are interested in learning. So Brooks, I'm going to turn it back over to you. Please do feel free to keep filling this out. This is going to be our sort of shared document that everybody will be able to use. And you'll be able to view this both now and after the presentation. And I see some really great stuff continuing to come in. So without further ado, I'll stop my share and send it back to Brooks.
Thanks, Christian. And I'm going to bring the slides back up and take us to the slide about got some questions in the chat. All of the resources from this whole training series will be posted on MAPC's website at the link that you can see there. You can also type in mapc.ma/AARC resources, all one word, and that'll take you to the page on our website where all of this stuff is being hosted. Christian, do you want to run us through our group agreements before we jump into the presentations?
Yes. All right. So we like to use these group agreements to help guide our conversations when we do large public meetings. And some of these will be familiar to you, especially if you come from an organizing space. So the first one is use an I statement, and I think this really applies to when we're communicating with each other in the chat. So make sure that you're sort of sharing from your own experience and not assuming what other people or what sort of more generalized what people think. Take space, make space. So this is this basically means if you tend to talk a lot like me, that you sort of relinquish that talking a little bit and give some other folks an opportunity to participate as well by providing space for that. Use accessible language. This is pretty relevant for something like a training series like this. So really what we're meaning is if you're communicating with folks in the chat, make sure that you're spelling out your acronyms and that anything that you don't need to have be technical language you use in the easiest to understand terms possible. Leaning into the edges is all about going beyond your comfort zone and being curious with things that you may not be already familiar with. Expect and accept lack of closure is all about understanding that our learning journey doesn't stop today. So inspiring some curiosity to move to continue learning about this topic as we participate and then leave the training today. Listen for understanding and be an active participant. Those are pretty self-explanatory, but we just like to use these group agreements to help us guide our conversations with each other. Thanks, Brooks.
Thanks, Christian. And before we turn it over to our presenters for today, I just want to mention something that came up during the last training last week, which is the question about, what about multifamily properties, larger scale multifamily buildings? We've been talking a lot about, smaller buildings, some single family homes or 1 to 4 unit homes. And we made the kind of conscious decision to focus on smaller buildings for this training series because the way that lots of clean energy programs work is that there are generally specific programs for smaller buildings, 1 to 4 units generally, and then other programs for larger 5+ unit buildings. So Emily Jones from LISC Boston is going to be along later today to talk about some resources and sort of a parallel training series and a cohort that she helps lead that's all focused on affordable multifamily housing and multifamily buildings in general and opportunities there. So plenty more to learn about that, but just wanted to mention our focus throughout this series and today is primarily on 1 to 4 unit buildings. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ben Underwood from Resonant Energy. Ben, you can go ahead and pull your slides up now while I'm reading through your bio if you want. Ben has over 5 years experience developing renewable energy projects, including 5 community scale anaerobic digestion or AD projects in Kathmandu, Nepal, and a commercial scale AD project in Kunming, China. Before founding Resonant Energy, Ben co-founded an AD development startup and served as one of the founders of Co-op Power's community solar program. Ben has received grants for project development from Davis Projects for Peace and the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, and was a Fulbright Scholar in 2014. He received his Bachelor of Arts degree from Bennington College. So take it away, Ben.
All right. Yeah, thanks for that, Brooks. And thanks to MAPC for hosting. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you all. For all those accolades, I biked to work today, so if I'm looking a little shiny, that's why. You could excuse me for that. And I'll share my screen here. And while that's getting set up, I'd be interested to hear, and maybe you could post in the chat, because I think I could approach this presentation in kind of 2 ways or some of both, but curious to hear people's perspective on a lot of the time when I talk about doing solar projects in urban areas, and specifically solar projects for environmental justice neighborhoods. And unfortunately, I don't think I can see the participants, but maybe you could say in the chat, if you're familiar with the EJ terminology, the people feel generally comfortable with the environmental justice and know what that definition refers to. I don't want to do too much review, but basically it's different states have different designations. Massachusetts, it means neighborhoods that have a higher proportion of people of color or a higher proportion of people of low wealth or people who don't speak English as their first language. So when I refer to environmental justice or EJ, that's what I mean. And I guess in particular, when I speak with people who are more from the traditional energy space, people who recognize, like I think we all do, the imperatives to respond very quickly to climate change and decisively in the next 10 years, since we have such a short window. Some people ask me, aren't projects in cities harder to do and more expensive? So, why should we focus on those when we could get a project for, in some cases, 40% or even 35% of the cost if we just did a large development utility scale project in the desert somewhere or on a green field. So yeah, maybe in the chat, I think that would be the angle of like, why do solar and environmental justice neighborhoods? Why is that important? If people are feeling pretty well on board with that already, I could have more of the focus for the remaining, I don't know, 10, 12 minutes be on how to do project and environmental justice neighborhoods, or I could do some of both. But yeah, do folks have any preference? Okay, seeing some support for how. Yeah, and some of both. So I'll touch briefly on the why, just because I think it's interesting, and I think it's also I would be interested to hear at least briefly, you know, how my assumptions as to the why question match what you all have as experts in other areas, or also in the same field, whether it's in housing or in health. But simply put, we have a huge transition that's happening. We're going to change how we generate energy in this country and probably globally. That represents a transition of people have estimated certainly over $1 trillion, probably tens of trillions of dollars that will be invested in clean energy projects. And we only really get one bite at that apple. We're not going to have two energy transitions in this generation. And in fact, increasingly, it's looking like we'll be lucky if we can have one. When we do that, I would say there's a moral imperative to make sure that the people who already have a lot of wealth and money and control going into this crisis, and the entities and corporations and individuals who had a hand in creating the crisis, are not the primary beneficiaries of this transition out of dirty energy and into clean energy. And structurally, having distributed generation is a really, really good opportunity to kind of take the keys to the power that's created and the wealth that can be created from the ownership of energy assets, and to use that as a way of distributing control and distributing power. And I can talk a little more at the end around why I also think that's strategically important and tactically important if we want to be successful in achieving the energy transition at all. So I would say it's not just a morally important thing to do to redistribute the power here, but also very tactically and strategically important. I can talk a bit about more about that. But as to the how, I can speak a little bit to how Resonant works here. In case anyone was curious, we are a solar developer. So we work on the one side with installers and impact investors, and then on the other side with community organizations to find locations to build solar projects. And so in doing that, we're kind of on the one hand educating communities, community organizations, and homeowners in low-income neighborhoods about solar, about how it works, what the benefits are and what the risks are. And then on the other hand, having really easy options for people to actually install solar systems. That makes it, well, I guess I could say it's specifically targeted at some of the barriers that, that I'll talk about next. So in short, we're really connecting impact capital, people who want to have positive social and environmental impacts with their investments, and solar contractors who might not otherwise be doing projects in low-income neighborhoods at all, with really well-developed project opportunities in low-income neighborhoods. And we kind of work to bridge the gap between these different camps. All right. Yeah, and a good point in the chat that you know, when we have so much built environment and so much space on rooftops, you know, should we really be chopping down forests to build more solar arrays? And does that maybe represent a misalignment of incentives? I would say it does. And actually, I can go back a slide here. Yeah, so you can see that the average cost, and this is from the projects that we've done for doing solar installations in urban neighborhoods, is simply higher. This is for about an 8 kilowatt system size, so about $5,500 more per project, and that translates to about 70 cents a watt. just to build projects in urban neighborhoods. This is for the same size project, right? So if we're comparing it to a baseline project of like a sloped asphalt shingle roof in a suburb, it costs about $5,000 more to do the same project. Now, why is that? We have a number of technical barriers that are very specific to denser urban housing that simply don't apply to what the sort of standard template project that I imagine the designers of the incentive program were thinking about when they designed the program. A key part of that is complicated and outdated building electric systems. Here's an example of one from one of our clients who lives in Dorchester. This is a multifamily building. And at the time, the utility was requiring that we move all of these meters outdoors as part of their regulations or part of their guidelines before we could install solar, which would have been prohibitively expensive. It's also just upgrading the outdated code. A lot of times work has been done, but has not been inspected. So there's simply more work to be done on the building electric side. Same's true of access. So you can see actually we were successfully able to help this homeowner install solar. This is somebody who lived really close to our office in Codman Square. But if you can imagine the building without the panels on the roof, I think that gives you a better impression of since we're talking about the challenges of it. Getting the panels on the roof is important. So when you're comparing this to a building with a sloped roof that has a nice long driveway that leads up to it and a front lawn, you can bring trucks up there, you can put a ladder on it. The same is just not true of this triple decker in Dorchester, where you need lifts, scissor lifts or lulls. In some cases, you need to shut down the road to gain access to the building. So all of this contributes to cost, and actually it's out of proportion with the incentive. So we do, thanks to the DOER and thanks to some steps that they've taken in the right direction, we have increased incentives for low-income projects and low-income residential projects. But from dozens of projects that we've looked at, the average upgrade cost, the incremental cost of installing solar for denser urban neighborhoods, triple deckers, et cetera, is about $5,500 more. The net present value of the incentives that are available to low-income homeowners from DOER, about $3,000 at this scale. So right out of the gate, if you're a low-income homeowner, if you live in a dense urban neighborhood, you're about $2,500 in the red compared to a suburban homeowner trying to install the exact same size system. And you might be thinking, okay, so there's more barriers, more capital intensity to install low-income solar projects in the first place. At least low-income populations have a lot of access to credit and a lot of capital on hand to be able to install systems, right? It's actually not the case. That would be wrong if you thought that. You can see how we have power purchase agreements that have aimed to remove the financing barrier to installing solar. As it turns out, from our research, about 51% of homeowners don't qualify for these options based on credit alone and on credit score. So, and I think probably from past series that you all have, or I said past workshops in this series, you've seen how the legacy of redlining and other exclusionary financing practices, this is kind of a piece with that. So we have all these providers that are focused on 49% of people who have high enough credit score to even get a PPA. And the same is also true of nonprofits and small businesses who banks and traditional financiers don't see as creditworthy. So you have higher capital barriers and you have less access to capital, right? These are two combined problems that are both mutually reinforcing. Our way of approaching it, and I think what we've had some success in and has been used in addition to the Mass Solar Loan Program, which has been another really good resource for low-income projects, which Lisa can speak more to if she's interested, or if you're interested. We've set up this program using an anchor institution model. And so we're trying to address both the capital barriers and the credit score problem. And the way it works in a nutshell is that we have a portfolio of projects. We give 15% of the power from each project at no cost to low-income homeowners who host the systems on their roofs, and then sell 85% of the power to a local anchor institution that investors deem to be creditworthy. For most of our projects, we've worked with Dorchester Bay EDC for that, and with SunWealth, another local firm, to provide the financing. Yeah, and so you can sort of see how the cycle works. SunWealth owns the assets on low-income customers' roofs. 85% of the power is sold to this anchor institution, and then the income from that goes to repay the investors. So in that way, the homeowners themselves are not exposed to any financial risk or new financial obligation from the solar on their roofs. And the investors have a creditworthy, what we call in the industry, an off-taker or a purchaser for the power that's produced. And so in that way, we remove the capital barrier because we have third-party investors, and we remove the credit score barrier, the credibility barrier, by exporting the power to a creditworthy purchasing institution that investors are more excited to do business with. And excited is maybe the wrong word, but who get lower cost of capital by having a entity with a larger balance sheet be the one that provides that that contract. And we've had some success with it. So this is one of our first clients, Olive Knight, who lives in Dorchester. Her husband, Alphonse, has been a longtime advisor to Resonant and was behind getting the solar installation built at Second Church in Dorchester, another one of our first. Yeah, here's a few more of our customers. Elnora Thompson in Dorchester, who is responsible for actually creating a community garden in the neighborhood and stopping a condo developer from coming in there. And she is another early adopter. We have Karen Payne. These are actually two photos we just took. Sorry for the graininess of them energizing their systems. And a few more of our customers in Dorchester. So it can be done, but I think it only works if we really have we really need like 10 companies that are doing this and not just one or two. You'll hear from Gabe, who's focused on very similar things. I think for this to work and to create the benefit from installing these very difficult to build systems, we need to take advantage of this vision for energy democracy that uses local installations in environmental justice neighborhoods to open the door to the solar industry that has been closed to a lot of people. And so, not only do you get people who can then directly benefit from the solar installations themselves, the energy savings that come from it, but you have a much broader and deeper coalition of people who care about solar the next time a bill comes up or the next time an election comes up. And I think so long as we have this very narrow coalition of people who care about solar, when people have to put their time on the line or take some amount of risk for new solar legislation or new solar policy, we're not going to be successful with it. And we have to have this type of and these types of coalitions to put their shoulder to the wheel and to really move things forward. A specific example that I can share here is that one of the people in the picture, the state representative, Representative Russell Holmes, this is at the installation at Second Church in Dorchester, was one of the people who introduced legislation to remove barriers to solar adoption in environmental justice neighborhoods, which he only did after Reverend Mariama, the AME pastor, who you can see there, after she told him that he couldn't come to the ribbon cutting for the event unless he introduced legislation that would help remove barriers for other people. So that sort of mutual dependency and I think really creating concrete change depends on having examples of projects that show people that the benefits of solar are for them and are not just for other people in other neighborhoods. So I think that answers both the why and hopefully also some of the how. Yeah, and I hope serves as a template for what you all can do to get the first project built or get a first critical mass of projects built. People want to do this, and people want access to it. People want to shape the policy. People want to bring the benefits of solar to their neighborhoods and to their friends and neighbors. But it takes commitment to do it. So if you come away with one thing from my presentation, I hope it's just a greater commitment and motivation, and an understanding that these are solvable problems, and that you can start to build momentum, but you just have to build the first project, and then commit.
Thanks, Ben. That was great, and I see a lot of good questions and conversation in the chat. So we're going to hold questions until the discussion portion after the other two presentations have been made. Ben, if you see any questions that you have quick answers to that you want to answer in the chat, please feel free to do that. But yeah, with that, I will turn it over to Gabe Shapiro from All In Energy. And Ben, if you want to take your slides down, Gabe, you can put yours up while I'm reading through your bio. So Gabe has spent the last decade working with communities and institutions to connect their constituents to clean energy technologies and services. At All In Energy, Gabe works with cities and towns to ensure populations that have historically been left out of energy programs, such as renters, non-English speakers, low to moderate income families, and small businesses have equitable access and support to participate. Gabe spends his time outside of work perfecting his urban garden with his wife and 2 daughters and walking his dog Tessie in the Arnold Arboretum, which is one of my favorite places. So Gabe, take it away.
All right, can I just tech check? Are you seeing my presentation? Did I
Yep,
share the
looks
right
good.
screen? All right, excellent. Yep. All right, well, thank you so much, Brooks, and thanks, Ben. That was a really interesting proposal or presentation. I'm going to talk a little bit about a different way to provide benefits of renewable energy to the similar types of populations, as Ben mentioned, but via a different mechanism of community solar. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about our experience trying to enroll subscribers in a really great program, what we learned from that, and sort of what we're doing with those learnings to provide a service that is benefiting the community. I guess what I'm not going to talk about, which might be of interest to some of you, but is not my area of expertise, is like how to set up a community solar program. So there are others who are experts on like how to do all the mechanisms and financing, Ben probably being one of them, to like figure out how to make a community solar program work. I'm really going to be talking about it from the individual residents or families who might subscribe and benefit from a program like this. So, okay. So I'm just going to talk a little bit briefly about All In Energy, talk about some of the barriers that we see to energy program adoption among these populations, then drill down on like what community solar is, how it works, like our experience working with it, and then tell you a little bit about our newest service that we created to sort of meet the community needs that we identified by doing this work. And then I'll close. So All In Energy, we are a 501c3 nonprofit that was formed in 2018. We are on a mission to accelerate a transition to an inclusive clean energy economy. And we are working with cities and towns, as Brooks mentioned in my bio, to help provide access to populations who historically, of no fault of their own, have had low participation rates in our nation-leading energy programs. And to us, that means renters, non-English speakers, low to moderate income families, and increasingly small businesses. And we are also providing pathways to access the clean energy workforce to minority and bilingual professionals. And that's been a really rewarding and successful part of our operation as well. We partner with cities and towns primarily. We got our start in 2018 in Dorchester. We have expanded to additional cities in the last couple of years. We, in 2020, launched our first fully bilingual program in English and Spanish in the Merrimack Valley. And this year, we've been building out our first trilingual program in English, Spanish, and Portuguese in Framingham. And our most recent partner is the city of Boston, who has partnered with us to actually deliver our newest product, this energy bill checkup, which I'll talk about a little bit later in the presentation. I will actually note, almost all of these programs, except for the Boston program, are really focused on connecting these populations that identified to energy efficiency programming. So we're primarily focused on the MassEC program and the income eligible low income weatherization assistance program. We did some piloting with community solar and low income community solar when we began that in like the early COVID period, when some of that work was not able to happen because of social distancing restrictions. But most of our work with these cities is around energy efficiency. So just general barriers for low to moderate income families. Our sort of access and desire to take on loans or lock in payments has been mentioned. I think part of the nuance that I learned doing this work is it's not only the access to taking on a loan, but it is the desire to take on a loan. There's a lot of folks who don't want to lock themselves into payments. They have managed to maintain good credit by keeping things a little bit flexible. So they don't want to bite off more than they can chew. Their future is often not fully certain financially. So it's not only just having a good credit score, it's also wanting to make that commitment. We met a lot of people. People are much more likely to be behind on their utility bills, especially during the period when we were doing this, which was again, early COVID, when people were losing their jobs and there was a lot of uncertainty. But when you're behind on your utility bills, this particular product of community solar does not produce savings, and immediate savings from energy programs are less meaningful if you are prioritizing food and medicine and not focusing on paying your energy bills. And then just with everyone, but primarily even more so in some cases with the low to moderate income populations, people are super busy. They don't have the time to research these programs, make sure that they're accessing the most beneficial one. These populations have been disproportionately harmed by predatory third-party energy suppliers. So it's easy for people to just say, I'm not doing anything energy related. I don't have time to figure out if this is going to be harmful or good for me. So they don't have the time to make that investment to figuring that out and vetting the different products. Let's talk a little bit about our experience last summer, primarily working on these projects and into this year as well. So before we got started, we worked with a couple community solar companies to help them access the populations we're serving, to do some surveys to help understand needs. I think the results of those, the information they gathered from talking to some of our low to moderate income clients, are still being incorporated into future learnings. So we did start offering a product without kind of incorporating that community feedback, and that produced additional learnings. We partnered with Sunwealth Financial to offer access to this solar carport, which is pictured there, which is at a temple in Acton. We were connecting mostly residents in the Dorchester neighborhood of Boston to the benefits of that community solar program that was elsewhere in Eversource territory. And we worked with some of our community partners that we had worked with on energy efficiency previously. The West on Washington neighborhood group was a big partner. Union Capital Boston promoted the program to their members. And we learned a ton. We filled the program up, so that was positive. But we learned a lot, and based on the learnings that we had from this project, we created this new service that I'll tell you about in a little bit as well. So just a little bit more about the product. It's a really beneficial product. It creates this 20 to 25%. This particular product created a 25% discount on bill credits. People are able to make a short-term commitment, but also benefit from the program for up to 20 years. There's no credit check, so that's not a barrier. And people, it's really easily to cancel with no fee within 30 days. So we're really excited about offering that to the community. It has a lot of benefits for the people that subscribe. The challenges, which I'll reference, is sort of a complex savings mechanism that involves a separate bill payment. You have to auto pay the bill by wire transfer or credit card. You only realize savings through that mechanism by reducing the bill that you pay to Eversource. So if you're not making those payments to Eversource because you are unemployed or prioritizing other more pressing needs, you don't realize any benefits. And then just as a minor one that has already been fixed, but at the time we were using the environmental justice community data from the 2010 census. So we were actually engaging with a fair amount of people from gentrified neighborhoods who qualified for this program, but really were not the target audience. And we did enroll, like, to fill the program up, some, wealthier gentrifiers in the Dorchester neighborhood. So that was just another thing that we observed as we were doing this program. So just to qualify for the program, you just need to be on the discounted electric rate, so have the R2 or R4 rate, or live in an income-based environmental justice community, which is sort of referencing, we were in some of those gentrified neighborhoods from the 2010 EJC data. And then we had a requirement that you be no more than 2 months behind on your electric bill, because we wanted to make sure that people would benefit. And those are really the only requirements. You could rent or own, there's no credit check, as we mentioned. We don't have to gather any more information about you, just like get your electric bill, and you can be enrolled. So that was the qualifications. Just a little bit about how community solar works from the customer's perspective for those that might not be familiar with it. So there is this farm, as I mentioned, that is in the suburbs, but in Eversource territory. So everyone who is in the Eversource load zone could access it. Basically every month, so actually, as we enroll you, we look at your bill, and then we are trying to allocate enough production from this community solar farm to reduce your bill by 80% over the course of the year. Every month, you get monetary credits on your bill based on the production of the solar farm or your portion of the solar farm, and those just show up as like as a credit, so like a negative charge on your bill. You don't have to change your supplier; it just shows up like on the bottom of the bill in this like transfer amount section, and that varies from month to month based on the production of the farm. So in some months in the summer, when there's more sun, you're getting a bigger reduction on your bill, and in the winter, you're getting a smaller reduction, of fewer credits put on your bill. So that happens, you don't have to do anything, just appears on your bill. That is an easy part for people to understand, and that is the benefit. At the end of the year, you will have paid approximately 20% to Eversource, as you would have in a previous year or without the program. The complicated part is the step 2 part, where in the subsequent month, after you've received this discount on your bill, you have to pay this separate bill to SunWealth, and you're buying those credits from that appeared on your bill at a 25% discount. So you're basically, buying these dollars that appeared on your bill for 75 cents, and you're always only paying for what appeared on your bill, and it's always at this 25% discount. So there's a lot of benefits, and there's no risk of paying for more than you received. But this is like a complicated one for people to understand. It is an additional bill. It's just inconvenient. It requires this auto pay, and this is where like a lot of people got hung up on that. But at the end of the day, as you pay for these the credits that you received at that discount, you basically get a 20% savings. So you're paying $100 before, now you're paying 20 to Eversource and 60 to SunWealth, and you're saving approximately 20%. Again, this like varies month to month, and sometimes in the summer, you're going to get a lot more credits. So your bill to SunWealth will be a lot higher because the payments you make are directly linked to the credits that you received. And in like some rare cases, you may have wound up paying more than you would have to Eversource if there was a lot of sun and a lot of credits. So it's a little bit even more complicated than it appears. But at the end of the day, there's like guaranteed savings for the people that this works the best for is if they're auto paying Eversource and they can set this up on auto pay to the same bank account. Like at the end of the year, there'll just be more money in that bank account. You never have to think about it. So what we learned by doing this, I did in this personally enrolled almost all of the subscribers. So I got to talk to a lot of people, look at their bills with them, explain the program to them, and we learned quite a bit. The first thing that I learned is people rarely, if ever, look at their electric bills. And because of that, sometimes don't know what's happening on them and like are not aware of some of the existing programs that we have in the Commonwealth to help them save money, potential, not necessarily by being greener, but just to like reduce their bill. This auto payment of a second bill was a deal breaker for a lot of folks. So that for various reasons. One, as I mentioned, they don't want to like commit themselves to a payment. People, when they need to prioritize like greater needs like food or medicine, will sometimes use their electric bill as like a flexible payment. We were in a shut off moratorium during this time, so there was not a lot of like risk associated at that particular time of not paying your bill. Another thing that was kind of shocking to me, but maybe was not that surprising, is that 40%, and I think now that I've looked at more bills, even more people are enrolled in third-party energy supply contracts. And almost none of them are saving money by doing this, and some of them are paying 40, 50% more than they would. So that's just like throwing away money. It was really frustrating and like heartbreaking to see that. And then we saw a lot of people, which is also even more heartbreaking, carrying huge balances, thousands of dollars to the hundreds of dollars. And many of them weren't enrolled in this like debt forgiveness program that we have. So wanted to help them with that. And then we met a handful of folks that were definitely eligible for the discounted rate, but we're not enrolled in it. So that was just like another one we're helping people. So I found myself, when I was selling community solar, helping people access a bunch of different programs and clean up their bills. And that was really what they needed at that time. They like weren't ready to be in community solar. So basically, based on those learnings, we came up with like, why don't we just provide that solution to people? Let's help them clean up their bill so that they can be ready to like access some of these renewable energy or energy efficiency programs. And like, let's solve actually the core problems that people are facing. And then after we've kind of taken care of that, we can, get them connected to these other things that are going to be both save them money and beneficial to the environment, but maybe are a little bit more complicated. We meet people every day that say, look, this is the bill. I don't understand it. I just pay it. Like, we don't know what's going on in the bill. So we wanted to provide the service. So basically what we came up with is this concept of an energy bill checkup. We are working with folks to do 5 different things in this energy bill checkup. The first thing that we're doing when we look at their bill, we're going to make sure if they're eligible for the discounted rate that they're enrolled in it, and that like gives them like an immediate 30% savings if they're eligible for that. Then we are going to look at their energy supplier, and then like I said, many people are enrolled in these third-party supply contracts, and almost all of them are paying more money for zero value. So we're helping them understand that, and then helping them cancel those contracts if we can get them out of them. And then again, like this debt forgiveness program, I've seen this. This is great, that Eversource New Start program. They match your payments up to 75%, and like you get yourself in a place where you don't risk a shutdown by enrolling in this program. And like, I've seen people over the course of the year, since we helped them access this program, like reduce their bill by thousands of dollars through this program, their balance. And then after we've kind of taken care of that, or for the customers that don't need any of these services, we are introducing them to this community solar program if they're eligible, and also connecting them to energy efficiency through MassEC or the low income program. On the call with me today is John Simning, who's delivered almost all of these to our customers. And we've both captured feedback directly from the customers and also done some surveying. People love this service. It like really helps them understand their bill. They feel like they're saving more money. They had actionable steps to like clean up their bill. So we've been really trying to promote this a little bit more. And as I mentioned, we just created a partnership with the city of Boston to offer this to several hundred folks in the city in companion with the rental relief program that the city has. So really helping people, not only access the rental relief program, but also, let's take care of this other must pay bill that you have on your utility bill to help you reduce those costs as well. So that is all that I had to share with you today about what we learned doing community solar, how it works, and this new product that we've created, this new service for folks to understand what they're eligible for, understand their bill, and help them save money before getting them onto the green energy programs that we offer as well.
Thanks so much, Gabe. And yeah, really appreciate particularly the sort of the creation of a whole separate part of your work based on what you were learning from folks, and that was something that was designed to be as useful to people as possible and solve the problems that you were identifying through your outreach work. So I think that's a great example. I'm going to turn it over now to Lisa Dobbs. Gabe, if you want to stop sharing your screen, and Lisa, if you want to pull up your slides, I'll read through your bio while you're doing that. So Lisa is a program manager at the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, where she works on residential building decarbonization with a specific focus on equity and energy access programming. Prior to joining MassEC, she spent 1 year at a clean energy startup, but actually has a background in exercise science and was previously a personal trainer and wellness director at a YMCA. In her free time, Lisa coaches rugby at MIT and contemplates whether 25 plants in her 1-bedroom home is too much or not enough. Take it away, Lisa.
Sorry, technical difficulties.
You're good.
So Brooks, thanks so much, and really thankful to be here today. Those were some really wonderful presentations, and I think really have sort of laid the groundwork for what I want to talk about today, which is one of our newest pilot programs to, I think, hopefully help start kind of working towards these potential solutions. I think Gabe and Ben and their organizations have been sort of working hard at trying to attack these challenges, and we're hoping to kind of continue to support that kind of mindset in trying to find these solutions to kind of these broader challenges. So I think we received a bit of background, but just to kind of quickly go through some of it again to provide some acknowledgement here. We definitely acknowledge that there has been an inequitable energy burden and access to clean energy over the years. MassEC has been operating for over 10 years, and us and other organizations have run a lot of programs, but maybe unintentionally have not been able to reach everyone. And so we're seeing that low-income homes have a disproportionate energy burden. Research shows that solar adoption lags for renters in minority communities. MassSave's done a non-participant study that's found that renters, low-income households, and non-English speaking households are more likely to not utilize energy efficiency incentives. Again, a lot of what Gabe's team is working on. But we want to acknowledge that we've got sort of these broad, ambitious climate goals, and truthfully, all residents of Massachusetts need and deserve to be a part of that collective clean energy future. And so how do we sort of address that? And we've run previous community-based models like Solarize and Heat Smart, which kind of focus on outreach and education, like right out of the communities. But we continue to see barriers, a lot of what's been mentioned before: upfront costs, landlord-tenant split incentives, and limited time. And we've also learned that not all communities are well served by a volunteer-led model, but also know that we think that a lot of the ideas lie within the communities and businesses there in those spaces. And so, how do we kind of harness that energy, and also know that those relationships with the trusted community partners are also key to success in campaigns and sort of other initiatives. So, so with that kind of background, we've put forth Empower, which is our goal with the program is to provide access to the benefits of clean energy or meaningfully reduce energy burden for previously underserved populations in Massachusetts. And I'll talk about both of those kind of highlighted areas there because we think they're more unique to the approach here. But ultimately, we hope to achieve this through investing directly in communities and community-based organizations to crowdsource those solutions for program models or projects to address this. And so the opportunities under the program are sort of broad, like there's a sort of broad network of support, which I'll kind of talk about later. But sort of ultimately, I think the two important points are the money, right? So the grants that we're offering for the program, which are innovation and capacity building grants, which are smaller grants, and implementation grants, which are larger grants. And I'll break those down in a second. But just wanted to acknowledge that that's sort of like the broader ecosystem of the program. But the implementation grants themselves, we already had a deadline for those. Well, we certainly intend to have future deadlines for those. But there is one upcoming opportunity for the smaller early stage grant, which again, I'll sort of break down to maybe spark some ideas. These are related to this discussion. And that deadline is coming up on November 10th. And I'll definitely provide information for everyone as well on that. But just to sort of take a step back and talk about access to the benefits of clean energy, we know that when a solar PV system is installed, that folks are receiving direct access to the benefits of clean energy, the reduced bills, the payback, and all that good stuff. But we know that it's complicated, right? We've got renters, we've got different challenges. And so we're trying to sort of broadly look at what sort of access to the benefits of clean energy mean. And we know that typical benefits can just, again, be those cost savings, clean air, health. But we also want to sort of explore solutions maybe that are non-traditional, such as like heat pumps for cooling, or considering what broader impacts insulation have, not only energy efficiency, but also quality of life through enhanced soundproofing or better air quality, and things of that nature. And so that's kind of the sort of broader focus of some approaches that could come underneath this program. And so I mentioned sort of those previously underserved populations, and this came up a bit, in Ben's presentation earlier, and also in Gabe's presentation about kind of who we're hopeful to reach. And so we've really stepped back and placed some intentionality with this program and said that we want to focus on these specific priority groups, which we define as the environmental justice populations that Ben mentioned earlier, renters, and communities disproportionately impacted by environmental hazards. So instead of sort of broad stroking a program, we wanted to say this is what we want to specifically focus on. And I think one important thing to note is that priority groups do not have to be geographically bound. So it could be sort of a network of maybe minority communities doing an outreach kind of campaign. And so, if any folks have questions on what that means, or if you have ideas for who you might want to work with or who you already work with, feel free to reach out to us, and I'll talk about some support opportunities there to have those discussions. So now I'll sort of bring it back to the grants. So we've got, again, those two grants. We've got the one that's sort of the smaller one where the idea or maybe program model or project that you're exploring sort of still needs discovery, refinement. So it's sort of meant to provide kind of seed funding of sorts to build towards a future program model or project. And then maybe that's also a future implementation grant under us, or maybe other funding sources. Then the implementation grant, the one I mentioned, which has already had a deadline passed, but will have more in the future, is when you can actually sort of, you've got your program and it's ready to go, and you just need funding to make it happen, which you can also do, outreach from some of that early stage stuff under this grant as well. We recognize there's some nuances between those grants, and that's just like sort of a brief overview. We've got office hours for folks to kind of learn more about the differences and kind of talk about their ideas. And we've had a lot of really exciting conversations then. And so what I wanted to do is maybe put forth some, I think that was sort of like a quick definition of what that is, but wanted to kind of put out some hypothetical examples, eligible uses for these to kind of paint the bigger picture of kind of what you can do with especially these innovation capacity building grants. And I think it really does tie into, again, like thinking about actually being able to just get funding to like explore ideas and sort of crack these challenges, right? And that's really the focus of these. And so, community-based organization could apply to fund multilingual staff to conduct community outreach sessions to help inform a design for a potential clean energy campaign, in an environmental justice community. I think one of the things that was also mentioned, I think last week, that we learned about the Community First program under MassEC. So folks could, maybe a partnership of a municipality and a community-based organization could come in and just get capacity building funding to prepare to sort of apply to a program like that, or even maybe use that funding actually to supplement. There's a new energy advocate position underneath that program, which we think is really phenomenal, and it's encouraged to be about 5 to 10 hours. You could maybe apply to this funding to actually make that a bigger, a bigger role, because we really see the value in that role, and it's a really exciting development out of that program. Or another example could be a community-based organization explores clean energy solutions to urban heat island impacts in certain neighborhoods. And again, I think sort of the broad idea is that, you get money to do feasibility studies or, try to do outreach to learn more about what could be designed or to get opinions from folks. And so I think that's sort of like the focus of this specific grant. So like I said, you can use it for staff time, for concept development. You could get technical studies done, use it for a grant writer or professional services, and especially I think, we're hopeful for is costs associated with ongoing community engagement. We think that's really important. And again, this particular funding could be used to work towards our future implementation grants or other grants like the Community First program. And folks can use the funds within the next 2 years of potentially being selected. So we also have some intentionality around who can participate. First and foremost, of course, it is everyone, but I think we're especially targeting community-based organizations to really acknowledge their critical importance, particularly with their demonstrated history of working with any particular population. And nonprofits are also eligible, individuals are also eligible, municipalities and MLPs are also eligible, and other for-profit institutions. But the latter two, the ones with those stars there, must partner with that community-based organization to be able to apply. Again, because we think that's really valuable and is sort of a critical piece of any one of these programs. So like I mentioned, we also are offering a lot of support underneath the program. That's sort of like an intentional design piece as well, where we've had a lot of one-on-one conversations. We're hosting office hours to talk about ideas and sort of answer questions. We've been offering various, educational modules, and we also have a Slack channel where folks can kind of meet and share ideas and just get ongoing updates about the program. And previously, we also hosted workshops where we had a lot of great folks attend and share a lot of great ideas, and we'll certainly host more, in the coming year as well. And so this will get sent out. I know y'all can't click on these links right now, but just want to encourage folks to learn more about the program, to visit the RFP page. Definitely just reach out to us with questions, attend office hours. But yeah, so I think that's pretty much it on my end. But happy to share this with you all today, and look forward to the discussion.
Great, thanks so much, Lisa. And yeah, we've heard all throughout the series about the different resources available, and I'm glad that you mentioned the sort of the potential for folks participating in this training or people in Massachusetts more broadly to do kind of both the Community First Partnership Program that we heard about last year, and potentially also the Empower program as well. So I think both programs, great resources if people are interested in diving in on this stuff. Lisa, if you want to stop, there we go, perfect. Great, so now we have our panelists up. There have been some great questions in the chat, and I've been trying to sort of pull together some themes that I have been seeing from the chat. But I guess I want to go to one kind of issue that Kai Salem pointed out in the chat, and was asking a question of Gabe, and I think it speaks to some of the the question of structural challenges that has been a theme that we've been discussing with all of the panels that we've had. But Kai asked, what is the impact of community solar on people participating in these programs? Gabe, your answer was, well, folks are paying into the SMART program and the solar programs that we have. Just like I think we talked a little bit last week about how everybody pays into the MassEC program on their bills unless they are served by a municipal utility, a municipal light plant. And so to the extent that people are not being served by these programs, they're not reaping the benefits of them. So they're paying into a fund and they're not getting anything back from it. So I think that's one of the points that I've heard people make that makes this really this work really crucial. So I guess just a starting point. I've been asking this of all the panelists. Lisa, you provided some great thoughts on this front, but maybe I'll ask you, Ben and Gabe. What would you say to a community that's just getting started on this, or that really wants to kind of ramp up their outreach work around community solar, or maybe the utility bill checkups that you were talking about, Gabe? What can they do to start connecting some of the dots between health, housing, and energy, and connecting people with these resources that we've been talking about?
I guess I'll go first. I think the first thing is to embrace that you have a role to play in this. Even if your role is not specifically around energy, with your place of being one of the trusted entities in this community, municipalities really have a role in like overcoming what is one of the biggest barriers, which is just like the trust barrier of people being able to feel comfortable accessing these programs. So by, researching which programs are beneficial and promoting those programs through the city's official communication channels, that can go a long way in helping people feel comfortable accessing those programs. And again, like cutting through the noise of all the like unscrupulous bad programs that are out there that are being marketed to them. So I think that's like the first step, is just to embrace it, even just like sharing the official like access, like notifications or, tweets and social media from MassSave and these other programs is a good start. And then like the next step of that is, accessing some of the programs that Lisa was talking about, taking the next step to like formally partner with the program administrators of MassSave to really deliver a co-branded program. And that's, what All in Energy is doing with 8 cities as well. So just embrace that you have a role and figure out how to help connect your residents to it is my first recommendation.
Yeah, that's great, Gabe. Ben, any thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah, building on what Gabe said, just recognizing you have a role, and there's just such a big disparity between, I think of examples of towns, cities, communities that have had very successful and like well-subscribed solarized programs, for example, or energy efficiency adoption. And that just represents the concerted effort of a lot of people who took it on themselves, often as volunteers, to get the word out about clean energy and about the benefits of clean energy, and sort of saying like, this is for us, this belongs here. I see Martha Grover and I think Laurie Timmerman from Melrose are on, and they did solarized program for Melrose, and I just want to sort of, I guess, hold them up as an example of like, they completed the solarized program for residences, and then started to think creatively, how can we get small businesses now? How can we get nonprofits? And I think those are exactly the right kind of efforts for it to work in a neighborhood where people have, for all different categories of service, I think been trained to think that maybe, that's not for us, and whether that's access to easy banking or access to healthy food, right? That these are nested issues. That the investment of just the time and energy and repetitive messaging of like, no, this is for here, this is for us. Here are the resources that are available. Here are, good. The difference between a good provider and a bad provider. I think that counts for a lot. So yeah, so I think concerted messaging and like marketing for what's good and what can be brought in would be a few things I'd highlight.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. I like that. Sort of making the effort to show people that these programs are for them is really important, because I think that's that for a long time that's not been kind of the default of the way that the programs have been set up, whether it's through the workforce and not seeing someone who looks like you when they show up to your house to talk to you about solar energy efficiency, or the sort of complexity, language barriers, et cetera. And I think that's where folks on this training can really help make a difference. Gabe, you spoke to something which I think is a really interesting point as well, which is that you guys are kind of working across the spectrum. You've done some work on community solar. Your bread and butter is energy efficiency outreach, and then you sort of once you learned that it was, that people's bills were really like what they were focused on, and you sort of pivoted to just focusing on, how do we get you onto a discounted rate? And I feel like that's a good example of, for anybody who is paying more than they would like to be on their utility bills, which is probably just about everyone, there might be a way to reduce those bills and to reduce your energy burden. So for the folks for whom energy efficiency is complicated, as we kind of talked about last week, you know, like with renters, for example, they're still paying an electricity bill. They might be eligible for the discounted rate. They could qualify for community solar. And so I like that you guys are sort of exploring multiple avenues and trying to find solutions that work for everybody. Any thoughts about your kind of approach to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think to make all of these programs successful in terms of engaging with the community requires community input and, you know, adjusting the program to what the community needs. So even around the programs that we're doing with energy efficiency with the communities through the Community First Partnership Program, each community has unique needs. Each community has different ways that they share information. So, you know, in some communities, it's working with the houses of worship, and some communities it's getting on Spanish language radio. Each community is a little bit unique. And to like sort of understand how to deliver an effective program or outreach campaign, engaging with community members and figuring out, you know, from the people who live there and work there and have been doing outreach on other issues is important. But similarly, like when you know, there's some programs that are not able to be changed, like we're trying to make MassSave how it exists for multifamilies and non-English speakers work, similarly with community solar. But when we saw an opportunity to create something new that did meet the need of the community, I think we had to figure out how to implement that. So I guess like this work is not done in a bubble. Like we're working closely with people on the ground in those communities to, you know, add these energy services to the portfolio of other services that they're offering. But engagement with the community and feedback is like the way that you're going to be successful in providing access to these programs and knowing what to change and what systematic changes need to happen. We're not the experts. We don't live in these communities. We need the community's input. And we're mostly just trying to make other things work for people, but we saw this opportunity to create something new that could be helpful. So we jumped in.
Yeah, well, I appreciate, you know, that you guys are listening to that feedback. You're listening to the people in the communities that you're working with. And, you know, there are big structural barriers that make things complicated. I think the complexity of the community solar program that you were working with, the two bills and everything, demonstrates that we still have a ways to go to simplify and streamline things, particularly for low and moderate income folks. But I think, yeah, it's okay to sort of acknowledge that the programs aren't perfect and still try to find ways to get people you know, to participate and benefit from them. Yeah, so I want to pause here and see if we have any questions from the audience for our panel. And yeah, if you want to raise your hand or type something in the chat, we know that you all know a lot and have lots of good questions. Bob, I see your video came on. Does that mean you want to ask a question? Nope, you're good. Okay. Catherine Wagner.
Hi, thanks. I just had a brief question, I think, for all the panelists, if they want to answer one thing in doing this work, while it's super impactful and meaningful, can feel a bit like you're swimming upstream. A lot of times, I'm sure people here can resonate with that. And so I wanted to hear a little bit of what gives you guys the most hope or excitement in doing this work for those who are still interested in pursuing this field as a career and all that good stuff.
Yeah, great question, Catherine. Anybody want to take the first stab at that? Lisa, we haven't heard from you during the discussion. What gives you hope?
Yeah, I would definitely say, you know, and I think maybe this is speaking specifically through my maybe experiences over the last year or two, is really just the conversations with all the new folks that I meet that are maybe not always engaged in clean energy, but want to do things to help people. And I think meeting all of those folks and having those conversations and like hearing the ideas that people have is so inspiring. And so even though we know and we continue to hear that those are challenges, we know that you know, the solutions are out there and the energy is out there, and we just need to keep like working on it. So I love all of those individual conversations and just meeting new people that I maybe would have never met before. So
Great. Gabe or Ben?
Yeah, I mean, it does sometimes feel that way. I'll often, but I think over the last year, I've been doing this work for a long time, 12, 15 years of like trying to promote these energy efficiency programs. I would say in the last 18 months, the focus at all levels on equity has like increased tenfold, I would say, from like not really there to like real thinking about how they're going to make the programs equitable. And hopefully in this next 3-year plan, real commitments from the program administrators, our investor-owned utilities, and making these programs work. But I think on a day-to-day basis, actually connecting, helping people, like really helps make you feel better about what you're doing. So we have the luxury of like working with actual residents who are benefiting from these programs and collecting those testimonials and talking to our staff who's working with them every day, and like, you know, actually seeing tangible results of people saving energy and money from accessing these programs is like really helps get me up every day in the morning, and definitely helps make you feel good about the work you're doing.
Thanks, Gabe. Yeah, Ben.
Yeah. Yeah, I think similar to Gabe and Lisa, for me, it's especially about people and the people who I get to work with through doing this work. Something that Reverend Mariama White-Hammond has said that has really stuck with me is like, a better world is possible. I think that we need to remind ourselves of that. We spend so much time focused on what is not working about the current set of things. And something that she said, and you know, over the years has been, we need to imagine and have a vision for what what specifically does a more nurturing, caring community look like for us, for ourselves, but also for other people. And yeah, and on a basic level, it's just really enjoyable and I think like fulfilling to be part of work that is building something better and helping to set up connections and to help other people like do that same work, and sort of the community that arises from that. I find that very energizing. I also, yeah, I think being real, it is a grind a lot of the time, but building community together and working directly with people who are doing the same is very fulfilling.
Yeah, that's it. It certainly is a grind, Ben. But yeah, you know, I think like I'm inspired by the examples that we've heard about through this training, and just sort of what that shows about how if you make an effort to do this work at the community level, you can really make a difference. And you know, Chelsea's example, Fidel's presentation last week, and everything we've heard about today, I think we're starting to show that, you know, in spite of the structural barriers that exist, that we also need to be working on, that there are ways to expand access to clean energy and to have that make a real difference for folks. Sarah, I see you with your hand up. Do you have a quick question for the panel? We need to wrap up here fairly shortly, but quick question.
Yeah, my question was from Gabe, and we can actually follow up separately on if it feels like it will be a more long-winded answer. But really just in the program that All in Energy executed, I wanted to see like if there was any obstacles with getting Eversource to like correctly allocate net metering credits, or if any of the off-takers ran into issues seeing those credits on their bills, because that's something that we've run into a lot of issues with, that especially like our nonprofit clients find exhausting about the process, is actually having that savings be implemented following installation.
Yeah,
So
I think
Gabe, maybe
okay.
can you answer that in the chat, do you think, or maybe
I
follow
did
up
actually,
offline?
so I think someone else asked me that in the chat, and I
Mm-hmm.
did write an answer. Short answer, yes, but I don't think it's that. So yeah, you can take a look at in the group chat. I answered that for someone else, but also Sarah, feel free to email me and reach out to me, and I'm happy to have a longer discussion with you for sure.
Great. Okay. Ben, Gabe, Lisa, thank you so much for being here with us today. Thanks for all of your thoughts and your leadership on this work. With that, hi, Emily, welcome. I'm going to turn it over to Emily Jones from LISC Boston, who's our partner in some of this work on the Affordable Access Regional Coordination Program. Emily's going to talk about some resources that might be relevant to some of you on the call here today. I'll talk about some other stuff that MAPC is working on that we're going to add to all of the materials for the trainings, and then we'll wrap up at 10 o'clock. So take it away, Emily. And thanks for being here.
Great. Can you see my screen okay?
We are seeing your slide notes. So if you want to give us the behind the scenes look, that's fine too. You might try sharing again and just sharing the screen that has the presentation view.
Can you see it now with presentation?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, so I just wanted to share a few resources that LISC has it's from our Green Homes program here. I know that the topic today has been very focused on maybe some of the smaller low and moderate income families and smaller buildings, but we are mainly focused on larger supporting multifamily affordable housing owners and accessing solar and decarbonizing their buildings. So happy to connect with anyone who is working with multifamily affordable housing owners on this. These are just a few of our programs. The STAR program, we work with Ben and the Resonant Energy team, as well as MACDC on STAR. And this is really because we were seeing that a lot of affordable housing owners were, just like we've been talking about today, had barriers to accessing solar. And we want to overcome those barriers, really make solar the norm when a building is undergoing a major rehab and ready to accept on-site solar. So this is a program that we have, the first phase is 15 organizations. We have a second round that we're currently opening up for applications for another 15 organizations. Would love to connect with anybody who is, working with an affordable housing organization, knows of if this program is open to for-profits, nonprofit affordable housers. We're trying to expand to housing authorities, but so if you are from a housing authority, happy to connect with you and we can talk more about that. And then just to plug our energy audit program, we know that this work is hard. I think that someone asked how do you stay hopeful? I think that our state has really provided leadership on moving toward decarbonizing in a really strategic way with our clean energy and climate plan, our 2030, 40, and 50 goals. So I think that we're on the right track, and tools like an energy audit, which is what our program supports, helps owners with multifamily buildings to think about, okay, what can I do as my property is approaching a major renovation or rehab? What can I do 5 years down the line, 10 years, 15 years to hit these different decarbonization goals and energy savings goals? So that's what this program is about. I'm happy to share more information on our website as well. And this is open through next year at least. Mass Clean Energy Center is one of our generous funders for that program, as well as DOER. And so, the last program I just wanted to share is really, it's a convening of folks like you, others who are interested in supporting affordable housing, decarbonization, energy efficiency, healthy housing. So this is virtual for now. but we have convenings, usually monthly or every other month. And our next session will be on all electric building tech specs. So thinking about space heating, hot water heating, and space heating and cooling options for multifamily affordable housing buildings. So please join us if you're interested in this, if you want to learn more, if you want to share what you've experienced and what you're working on. It's really a community of practice for us to learn from each other. We'll have another session in December on BERDO 2.0, which is Boston's Building Energy Reporting and Disclosure Ordinance. So that's another thing that you'd be on the lookout for. This is my contact information and my colleague Silvana Bastante's information. So please just reach out to us if you have any questions, and I can share this in the chat as well. So thank you all.
Great. Thank you so much, Emily. Thanks for being here. And yeah, hope folks will join the energy cohort or participate in some of those great programs. So we are coming to the end of our time here today, and the end of our 3-part series. Before we close, I just want to share a resource that MAPC has been working on to sort of kind of collect all the information about some of the programs that we've been learning here. So this is our matrix of clean energy programs for low and moderate income residents. We don't have the Empower program or the Community First Partnership on there, and I think we should probably add those, but this is currently focused on the incentives and rebates. So you can go to mapc.ma/AARC-matrix, and it's searchable. It has short sort of descriptions of each of the programs and then links to all of them. So if you're curious to learn more about programs that we talked about here during the training, check that out. Another thing I'll mention, so if you want more, if you were really excited about what you learned during this training and you want more of that kind of information and learning, check out the network, or NEWHAB, the Network for Energy, Water, and Health in Affordable Buildings. It's a network of people from all over the United States dedicated to a future where everyone has a good home, one that is permanently affordable, protects health, and contributes to climate and community resilience. Full disclosure, I'm on the advisory council for NEWHAB, and it's how I met Jamal Lewis and Catherine Lee, our presenters from the first session. Great group of people doing really great work, so would recommend you check that out at newhab.net. And lastly, as I mentioned, the materials from all 3 trainings are going to be recorded and up on the MAPC website. They're going to be posted there at mapc.ma/AARC resources. So with that, thank you so much for joining us today and over the last 3 weeks throughout this training series. Have a great day and take care.